Hello and happy Wednesday. Pastor Tim here. I want to do a part two today. Last time we met together, we did a part one of creating a culture of honor. And I want to do a part two to that today. In everything that we do, we want to be careful not to rob God of the honor that's due him. And especially in the church, when it comes to comparing ourselves, here's what happens too often. Somebody is known to have made a great contribution, whether that be financial or time or whatever. And sometimes rather than just celebrating that, some people will take it upon themselves to try to one-up them. I know, hard to believe that ever happens in church. But the Bible has precedent for this, and it's at the very beginning of the history of the church. Let me read a verse for you out of Acts chapter 4. Well, you know what? Before we do that, how about Acts chapter 2, verse 42? All the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. This was when the believers organized. This is when, I guess we could say, they formed the first church, a collection of believers. This was very shortly after the day of Pentecost. I'm not sure exactly how long after, but sometime after. And there was an attitude of honoring one another so that no one was in lack. No one would have need. They were taking care of each other. And this culture of honor grew. But it didn't take long for someone to come along to try to hijack some of that honor from God. The very end of chapter 4 introduces a gentleman that we know as Barnabas. That's actually his nickname. Acts 4:36 says, "For instance, there was Joseph, the one the apostles named Barnabas, which means son of encouragement. He was from the tribe of Levi, and he came from the island of Cyprus. He sold a field he owned and brought the money to the apostles." So his attitude was pure. We can surmise because of his nickname. He was an encourager. As a matter of fact, when he and Paul traveled together, we don't even think of him as being Joseph. We know him as Barnabas. But the very beginning of Acts chapter 5, following the verse I just read, starts with the word but. Now, I know it's an English word and that the Bible was not written in English, but most English translations do render the beginning of that verse with the word but. So whenever we see that, there's a contrast. And then we read about these people named Ananias and Sapphira. I'm not going to read the whole story. Some of you are going to be familiar with it, and those of you who aren't, I encourage you to read Acts 5. But let me read the first two verses. "But there was a certain man named Ananias, who with his wife Sapphira sold some property. He brought part of the money to the apostles, claiming it was the full amount. With his wife's consent, he kept the rest." So this was kind of devious. They wanted to get some credit, but they didn't want to just give it all away. Now listen, they had the right when they sold this property to do with it as they pleased. They could sell it and keep all the money. They could sell it and give some of the money, but they conspired to keep some of it, but tell people that they were giving it all. Now, Peter challenged them. Peter was operating in a word of knowledge and word of wisdom in how he handled this situation. And it did not turn out too well for Ananias and Sapphira. See, they were trying to hijack honor that was due to God. We cannot attempt to steal the glory of God for selfish reasons because it will not end well. In this case, Ananias and Sapphira both dropped dead. Now, that'd be a powerful church service, wouldn't it? You come into a meeting and try to pass something off as true that's false and make yourself look better. And if you knew you were going to drop dead, that might kind of affect the way that we have our church meetings. And there's really no evidence that God repeated this, but maybe he didn't have to, because the very end of the story in Acts 5:11 says, great fear gripped the entire church and everyone else who heard what had happened. Yeah, I guess so, huh? That would put some fear into you. But God does not want us to serve him out of fear, huh? He wants us to serve him out of love. He wants relationship with us. But he had to go on record here as stating that, you know what? If you try to rob glory that is due only to God, it's not going to go well for you. It doesn't fit with creating a culture of honor. So what does that mean for us today? It means that if we bring pride, or if we bring any desire for fame into the presence of God, it's not going to end well for us. Now, we may not drop dead like Ananias and Sapphira did, but we can't expect things to go well if we do not continue to create a culture of honor for one another in honesty, and honor for God. Let me challenge you this Christmas season. We're getting awfully close to that day. As we think about the gifts that we give others, as we consider the attitude we bring with us when we come to gatherings at our churches, let's create a culture of honor for God. Let's not do anything that would seek to reflect well upon us. Let's just give him honor and glory. You know what? If you honor him, he will honor you in due time. God bless you. Have a Merry Christmas.